I'd like to open up the Audit Committee for the month of July. As you can see, we're the most popular committee today, so Andrew and I will handle the burden. First thing, we have no public comments. Approval of minutes, Andrew.
Moved.
Second. All in favor? Okay, committee work plan. Stays the same. No changes in our committee work plan. Okay, next thing on the agenda is our independent accountant's review for the first quarter of 2012. It's all yours.
Thank you. Put your microphone on. We have completed our review of the financial statements for the MTA for the quarter ended March of this year. As you're aware, and as we discussed with you in the past, we have reviewed the financial statements, and a review is substantially different than an audit in that the procedures are limited to basically analytical procedures, discussion with management, reading of the minutes, updating legal letters, representation letters, and generally reading the current press and current items to understand what potential changes or what potential information is out there that should indicate some change to the financial statements. Based upon those procedures, we are ready to issue our review report on those financial statements and note that the financial statements as they're presented, there's nothing that came to our attention would cause us to believe that there should be some modification to them. I do want to point out one thing. There was a change in the first quarter of this year. The MTA adopted GASB statement number 63, which dealt with the reporting of deferred outflows and inflows. And what that really means is now you are required to present on your balance sheet. By the way, you probably always have been required to. There was some diversity of practice in that, but basically those relate generally to amounts for deferred gains or losses on hedging type of activities. The new pension pronouncement will require you to include the total unfunded liability. So that is the material change. It also changed the statement from a statement of net assets. In the past, your balance sheet had been called a statement of net assets. The standard changes that to a statement of net position, which is intended to reflect the fact that you are now including those deferred, what I'll call debits and credits.
What's the period of this latest audit?
March 31st.
March 31st.
Ends March 31st.
Yeah. I like to review the comparison with the financial plan. Right. And I only have one question on that, and that was on page 102. Okay. Under other business expenses, we had 32.4 down to 4.9. Seemed like a big drop, 27.5. And I was just wondering what could that be made up of? Have any idea?
Basically, basically there's a different, the roll-up of how they roll up the individual line items in the financial plan. Sometimes they're different from how we roll it up in the financials. So I think, timing-wise in the financial statements, we have more time to classify things exactly where they belong. So, I'm not saying for sure, but there may be accruals in that number, whereas in the financial statements, since it takes a little more time to get them done, there's more granularity in how we classify the expenses. So
I suspect that's the
good on
difference.
that.
Actually, we're not going to talk about it, but there's a little management letter comment that talks about sometimes the differences in reporting. And mainly it's accruals.
Okay. Any questions?
No, but if there's that kind of change in that category, I wonder what's in some of the other ones,
Well, I
right?
looked at the others. The others are not bad.
Oh, okay.
I need a motion to accept.
Moved.
Okay, second. Approved. The second thing that I have is our single audits reports. You're back on.
We have completed our audit of the MTA's federal financial assistance programs for the year ended December 31 of 2011. As you are aware, to the extent that the MTA is the recipient of federal financial assistance, it's required to have an audit of its federal financial assistance programs. And by the way, the audit, there are very specific audit requirements that we have to follow in performing the audits of those. But as a reason, and which basically, when it's all said and done, we are required to perform an individual audit of each grant program. Now, a grant program is something that's defined by, the federal rules. But to the extent that you have a grant program that exceeds a certain threshold, we are required to audit it and report on it on an individual basis. We have done that. You will see on page 116 the schedule of federal financial assistance, which lists all grants that were subject to the audit. Not all were audited, but were subject to the audit. And Darshan, what was our threshold? So anything over $4 million would have been considered to be a major grant program, and we would have audited individually. On page 112 is our report that basically says that. It basically says that based upon on pages 112 through page 115 is our reports on our audits of the federal financial assistance programs, and basically says that we have reviewed the systems of internal accounting control and the systems of compliance as they relate to the major grant programs. We would be required to disclose to you any material items or significant deficiencies that we noted during our audit. We noted none. There is, a couple of minor findings that are reported that don't rise to that level. I'd be glad to answer any questions that you may have.
Any questions? Need a motion to accept. Second. Second. All in favor? Carried. Okay. Let's see. The next thing I have is CERTOA 2011.
I'm going to turn this over to Mike Malloy.
Okay.
Does that work? Yep. Okay. We, after some time, as you know, there was a bit of a delay in trying to get this audit completed, but we have completed our audit of the CERTOA. You should have a draft set of financial statements there. The challenge was really just getting there was some change in management at CERTOA, and it resulted in delays in them closing their books, completing the draft financial statements and things of that nature. And we worked with them, and they got some outside help to assist them as well in getting them completed. I guess if there's any questions, I can go through those.
I guess my only question would be, what are we going to do to prevent this in the future from this delay? Okay. Okay. Other than that, I have no questions. Anyone?
I mean, I've raised the issue of CERTOA many times because for 15 of the 16 stations, you're not even required to pay a fare. Mm-hmm. So I'm just wondering, I mentioned this to the chairman, I understand from Commissioner Capelli there have been several crimes committed on the line, and ridership is not showing the consistent increase, and I'm sure that's because so many people are not paying, because you're not even required to pay unless you're going to Tompkinsville or St. George. So are we looking to maybe have the Eagle team do periodic, like we do on the SBS buses, checks of who has fare and who doesn't have fare? Or
Well, by the way, we've raised the issue ourselves. I mean, just from the standpoint of view, it makes it a little bit hard to audit, too, because of, the ability of having the openness there. There really is a public policy issue. I mean, it's really, it's really more of that. I guess there is some past practices that come into play with it. I mean, from our standpoint of view, as auditors, we would say to you that it ought to be a closed system, just like everything else.
I'm sorry, Dave. The past practice was that since it was, 90-some-odd% a commutation line, the fact that you were paying or exiting to get out at St. George or paying to go in at St. George supposedly covered all that. But now there's a lot of intra-island movement.
No, exactly. So I mean, if you ask us what would be the optimum, I mean, it obviously would be to have a closed system like you have at the rest of the the subways in the city.
Proof of payment, such as you have on the SBS or Hudsonburg and Light Rail or something.
Well, but that's a little difficult to enforce. I mean, the spotters do work, but the fact that it's so open. I mean, if you're asking me the optimum way to do it, but we've discussed that, and actually the public policy issues have been raised with us when we discuss them. We're kind of not in a position to address those. So, it is an issue. It's it's something that should actually there's something should be.
That's just what it is.
It's an issue. And it probably does need some more thought.
Yeah, no, we're all going to talk about it. I spoke to the chairman about it, and he wants to do something.
So we should speak to the policy issue.
But it is
policy
really that's the issue that's raised with us. Right. But we would agree from the standpoint of view, just as a pure financial advisor to you, we'd say close it, put the processes that you have in place at all of the entrance and exits that you have, the rest of the MTA systems,
or treat
open
it like
it up
a commutation
totally.
line where you have a conductor come through, which was deemed too expensive, obviously. So.
Yeah.
Okay, any other questions regarding Chateau? Can I get a motion to accept it as submitted?
Moved.
Second? All in favor? Carried. Okay, management letter. This is David's show today.
I get it. Totally. We have, as a part of our audit of the financial statements for the year ended December of 2011, we perform a review of the system of internal accounting controls for the purposes of, first of all, understanding the system of controls to help us in the design of our audit, and to understand the effectiveness, so it helps us determine the timing and the extent of detailed testing that we perform on the account balances at year end. We have done that. And as a process of looking at that system, we generally develop observations and recommendations. If we were to find an item that constituted a material weakness in internal accounting control, and we actually had talked to you about one, the Sertola thing was, we talked at the end of the year, and that was more circumstance than it was anything else. But if there was an item or a weakness in the system of controls that were so significant that it could cause a material misstatement in the financial statement, that would be considered a material weakness, and we would be required to disclose it to you. We're also required to disclose significant deficiencies, and those are deficiencies that are significant but don't rise to the level of a material weakness, and we'd also be, and that's very much a judgmental issue. Both of them are, but that's much more than others. The items that are included in our report don't rise to those levels, but there are a number of comments that we have in there that relate to items that we've observed, that relate to the system of controls, compliance with MTA policies, procedures, good practices. And you also asked us to specifically look at the BSC, and we did, and there's a number of comments in there that relate to our review of those. I don't plan to go over each of these items in detail. There's a couple I do want to mention to you. At the BSC, there were a number of issues related to the reconciliation of cash and amounts around that. We actually think that the BSC and the MTA should look at that process and see if there's something that they can do to help improve it or help timing. Timing is an issue. It's a pretty cumbersome process. So, and actually, we even make the recommendation that they should consider, having more of the reconciliation work done, or the reconciliation work done at the individual departments and agencies versus the BSC, from a control standpoint of view.
I know Mike and I have talked about that, and I think what I'd like to see happen, I'd like to leave it the way it is and let Mike go in and check it.
Yeah, our discussion is they ought to look at it. I understand what they're trying to do, and maybe time cures that. But right now, by the way, the reality is right now, and by the way, it was an issue for our audit because for the first time we were waiting on some of the stuff. And the reason was ultimately because the requisite knowledge existed at the individual components. They basically did the reconciliation. So, from our standpoint of view, put it where it's really being done anyway. It's just an efficiency thing.
And we looked at this, David's right. We talked to the BSC about this, and David's right. A lot of the work is done at the agencies. I think the BSC is going to come up with a new process in order to make sure we can do this. And then we'll look at it in 3 months. And if it's not still working or it's still very cumbersome, then we may suggest and go in line with what David's suggesting to perhaps put it back in the agencies. But get the BSC an opportunity first to see if they can put a new process in and work with the agencies. Because bank recs unto itself has never been an easy thing to do anyway.
Well, there is another item and actually this item is pretty significant. It does, it appears it's not. We put a comment in there that dealt with succession planning, and for the first time since I've been around the MTA, we're looking at what we call the bench. And the bench is not, it's just, by the way, it is not unusual for agencies like yourself to find themselves where they are. I can think of, I won't mention names, but I'm involved with a number around the country and some around here, and those agencies find themselves in similar circumstances. But the MTA really does need to look at its bench strength, particularly in the financial areas. What we find is there's pockets of strength in all of the agencies, but not a lot of backup. And we look at the TA and MTA and headquarters and the Metro North, Long Island Railroad. They're all the same. I mean, there is at least there's a belief that that you should be proactively looking at that, trying to understand what's going to happen 10 years out versus letting it happen. The reason I mention it and the reason this comes to light, that is Sertoa. Absolutely Sertoa. I mean, there was a circumstance there where we didn't have succession. People leave. We don't have the bench strength to fill it, and things fall through the cracks. So versus letting that happen elsewhere within the organization, we think it needs a good bit of effort.
So not only are, I know you're in your report, you were talking about MTA headquarters.
No, by the way, we put it in headquarters only because that was probably the best place to put it.
Okay,
but it belongs everywhere.
Right. Well, a lot of that comes from a lot of the retirements and.
It's just, by the way, you are not unique.
Yeah.
What has happened? Just a general observation is that. When I was young, there was a good number of people made a decision in those days to basically, and pay, by the way, pay was pay wasn't the same as it was in the private sector and the government, but benefits were better. People could make decisions about the trade-offs, and they did. So you had a lot of people choosing to do that. That's not the same today, and as a result, you're not drawing. Pay's an issue, by the way. I got to tell you, pay is an issue, regardless of what people said. Pay's an issue, because if you look, particularly for financial people, I know what we pay starting people, and I know what you pay starting people, and it's an issue. It's an issue for us when we're paying a lot more, because we recruit every person we can get, and so there's a lot of competition for those resources out there. So it's a bit about that. So you're not growing bench strength, and when you aren't growing bench strength, you have to be proactively looking at it all the time. It's not as bad when you've got a new crop of people that come in every year, and you can count on people developing through the system. You don't have that anymore. So because you don't have that, you need to identify where there's going to be potential for issues and deal with it. And I'd say sooner versus later.
Any questions or comments? I just have one. There are no new or current year comments regarding the transit authority.
It's true.
I said, man, that's really good.
It's,
as
it's,
big as they are, and
there's
as
no
complicated.
observations that we saw there that would warrant a new.
But that's a
comment.
good thing. Okay. Any other questions? You have to accept this management letter as submitted. Need a motion?
One other comment. I'm obligated to mention this every year. The interagency loan. There is a plan, however, in place at the starting in 2012 to pay it off, right?
$500 million. Okay. That's his plan. Okay. Any other questions?
Hold on, I'm looking for my hearing.
Doesn't have more riders. Maybe not
No,
anymore.
they don't.
Not anymore.
You don't?
Yeah.
Do you have a copy of the management letter?
Yep.
There you go.
Nope.
We got it, Dave.
So what's on the, I'm sorry, what was moved?
Move that we accept the management letter as submitted.
This is the report to management?
Yeah.
Management letter means to me something else, the management's letter to the auditor.
No.
The representation letter. So it used to be
Yeah.
called a management representation letter,
that's
i.e.
what I-
management letter,
that's what I
right?
was looking for.
Can I get a motion? Second?
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Move it, whatever you need from it, one of the two.
All in favor? Carried. Okay. Just stay there, David. Don't move.
Still up.
Investment compliance report.
The state of New York has a requirement that has basically certain investment guidelines that, as a public authority, you're required to follow. They also put a requirement that basically says that the auditor, in his performance of the audit, should look at it, I guess is the best way to say it. Doesn't say that I have to basically, give a report on compliance. It basically says that I have to review it. So what we have is a report that basically said, during the performance of our audit, we did that and nothing came to our attention. That says that the investments aren't in compliance with the New York State laws and regulations.
Okay.
No due diligence?
Yeah, no, we do. We actually, by the way, we actually do test it to make sure it's in compliance with both MTA's policies and.
But you won't put that.
Well, that's not what they asked me to do. So, and by the way, by the way, versus a report. Now, by the way, there is a very big difference because once then you have to lower materiality of the audit to the level of investments, which would make it a big deal. It would require a lot of effort, but we do a lot around compliance. And if we noted that you weren't in compliance, we probably have reported that very promptly to you.
Okay.
So the language is the current state of the art.
It's the state of the art of what people do.
Okay, I need a motion to accept the compliance.
It is, isn't it?
I need a motion to accept that report. Second. Okay, all in favor? Okay, carried. Okay, David, I think this is the last one. The agreed upon procedures for the IG.
Since you fund the IG, and we don't perform an audit, by the way, of the IG because of, there's lots of reasons. There has been a custom that has existed between the IG and the MTA to have their external auditor perform certain procedures that have been agreed to between the MTA, the IG, and the external auditors. We have performed those. Those are listed in extreme detail in the letter. As a result of those, there are really no items that came to our attention that would have to be disclosed to you. There are, by the way, because it is agreed upon procedure, and to the extent that there was an 80-cent error or difference between the procedure, it is disclosed in here, but that's it.
In short answer form, why? In short answer form, why do you not audit the IG?
I'm going to defer. I don't know.
I never had.
This has been the process since I've been here, and that's 18 years.
What's
Actually, there's some
what's
privilege
customary?
issues. Actually, I think there's some privilege issues.
Yeah.
To be quite honest with you, a lot of their stuff is not subject to. First of all, I'm discoverable. They aren't. To the extent that I do a lot and look at a lot of maybe undercover activities or whatever.
You just won't put it in a letter ever, but I know you do a lot.
But our working papers might be subject to discovery.
But it's
That's a piece of it. I know.
But that's not a
piece.
change. That's
It
customary.
is not a
for-
Correct.
change.
That's
It's been that way
practice.
since the beginning of the
Since
time.
the MTA funds the IG's operations, we decided many years ago to audit their expenses. But the MTA really, the IG's office is really outside of the MTA's domain. They don't report to anyone at the MTA. So their practices and procedures are governed by
They're independent.
They
someone
report
else.
directly to the governor's office.
Governor's office. That is why.
Okay, that's right. That makes sense. Right. Thank you.
Okay, need a motion to accept the MTA IGs. Second? All in favor? Carried. David,
Thank you.
I think we're finished. Thank you. Okay, Mike, you're up.
Thank you, Jim. In the audit committee package, you will find updates to our audit plan as of June 30th. It includes the executive summary of audits completed in the first half of 2012. Information in these reports have been provided to the agency presidents, the chief of staff, the chief operating officer, and the chairman. In this presentation, I will reemphasize our 2012 goals, review the overall audit plan status as of mid-year, share the results of our management surveys, review our plans in the second half of 2012, and answer any questions the committee might have. We have aligned our audit and management support services with the MTA's business strategy in order to achieve the objectives listed. Our work includes focusing the audit work on internal controls, work processes, and cost efficiencies. And finally, the most important aspect for an audit is the implementation of audit recommendations, and we have and will perform follow-up reviews to ensure that this occurs. This is a summary allocation of our actual resources by functional areas as consistent with the plan approved by you in January. This is a summary allocation of our resources to be provided to the agencies. This is consistent with the resource allocations as well presented to you in January of this year when the committee approved our 2012 audit plan. Again, one of the challenges that our department has is to provide audit coverage for MTA headquarters and the agencies on a consistent basis while considering the overall risk to the MTA. One of our highest coverage areas within MTA headquarters this year has been our involvement with the BSC Release 2 rollout that pertains to the payroll and human resource functions for New York City Transit, MAPSTOA, Staten Island, and MTA Bus. Later in the year, we'll be doing the Bridges and Tunnel implementation as well. These are samples of audits that we will conduct this year under each category. Our work to date has included the following projects. Just to give you a brief synopsis of some of the work under these categories, at the Business Service Center for Release 2, we reviewed controls, validated aspects of the new parallel testing results, and we will review the head count since the BSC did go live for New York City Transit under the new processes, both for payroll and human resources, and we expect to begin that work within the next week. As for Paratransit Zero Fare, we validated a cost model developed by McKinsey. Our work at SATOA, as you heard here, involved providing assistance to management so they could close the books for 2011 financial statements. At the request of Bridges and Tunnels presidents, we're performing work with the development of a new timekeeping system that will go hand in hand with their implementation of the payroll for the BSC. And similarly at MTA headquarters and the BSC, we're working with them on the MTA pension interfaces as part of the new PeopleSoft system. The last three items are assurance audits that we performed over MTA no-fault bus fuel usage and track inspections and provided our results to management for their action.
Will your Paratransit Zero Fare inspection also take into account whether those cards are being transferred to others?
Yes. As that program gets rolled out, we'll look at all aspects of that new business process to ensure compliance. And we're maximizing our revenue. In summary, we had a productive first half of 2012. We completed 76 projects and 96 contract audits with over 200 recommendations. At this point, we're on target to complete our audit plan, and we will keep the committee apprised of any changes. We had very good results on identified cost savings, $7.1 million on the operating side and $25.6 million on the capital side. We have provided these results to management, and they are taking the corrective action to include these cost savings within their budgets. I will highlight some of the key accomplishments in the next few slides. Annually, we sign up to performance goals with each agency president. These are agreements that include our commitment to provide quality audit services to the MTA and the agencies. Part of these agreements is a commitment to survey the agencies to obtain feedback on our performance. We sent out 65 surveys earlier this year to each agency head and senior management where we've had involvement. We received a response rate of almost 80%. The results of our survey information is reviewed, summarized, and analyzed for trends, followed up where appropriate with the respondents. We request comments in 4 areas. Scoring is on a scale of 1 to 5. Looking for a 3 as an indicator of good performance. We once again received overall positive results with our scores of 4.6 overall. To achieve quality results, it takes professional staff. I am pleased to inform the committee that we have staff with a high degree of education, competency, and certification. This is evidenced by 42% of our staff being certified. This past June, we brought in with Deloitte, through Deloitte, a 3-day class to cover the key audit areas included in materials for the Certified Government Auditor Professional Certification. This type of continuing professional education development emphasizes to our staff the importance of obtaining and maintaining professional audit certifications. Going forward for the second half of 2012, I want to restate to the committee that our primary role is an independent function that appraises risk, vulnerabilities, and internal controls in the organization. In the second half, here are some of our key audits that we will be performing and are critical to the organization for the remaining part of the year. The top 3 are a continuation of work in these areas, as I talked about. Now that the BSC is live, we'll make sure that things are working correctly. We're going to do a lot of validation work to ensure the accuracy of the payroll processing and the human resources side as well. As I mentioned before, the MTA pension agency interfaces, we're actively involved in that task force in order to see the completion of this project and working with the B&T on their implementation of a new timekeeping system that will be critical to the implementation of the payroll at the BSC as well. The last 3, advertising contracts, rental property income, and select bus services that you talked about before. These are new areas that we're going to be doing to ensure that we're maximizing the revenue for the MTA in these areas and that the vendors are complying with the contracts as well. Also in the second quarter of this year, we We will coordinate activities with agency management, the MTA Inspector General's office, independent auditors, Deloitte, and the city and state controller's office as necessary. So with that, this concludes my presentation. If you have any questions, I'd
I
like
just
to
have
ask
one
them.
question. You
Sure.
listed a few of those audits. They're impressive list. When was the last time you audited those particular, if you want to put it up, those categories or those examples?
These?
Well, you can start with that. I mean,
Well, these
some of
are-
those you do annually.
Some are recurring audits, but I would say about 50% of them are new areas that we'll be doing
Okay.
at the MTA.
So flip to the next. I'm sorry. So the next. No, wait. No, you just went by it. One more back. One more back. Yeah, stop. These are the audits you're going to do in the second half?
This is what we did the first half of the year.
Okay,
the ones-
so when was the last time you did several of those? Pick any. I'm just trying to get a feel for it.
Well, the Business Service
Those are
Center.
not those are a mix of annual and
Those-
recurring and
those-
non-recurring?
These are pretty much some new start areas, like the BSC is new.
Right.
So I couldn't do it 2 or 3 years ago,
Right,
naturally.
right,
But we've been
right.
involved for the past 5 years with the BSC in various aspects. Paratransit Zero Fares are a new initiative through McKinsey, so we were involved with that. Because 25% of my audit plan, just so you know, is management requests. So as new initiatives come up and I have a real-time audit plan, I can react to the needs of management in doing those audits.
And what does pension agency interfaces mean exactly?
That's because we went to a new PeopleSoft system, and MTA headquarters has an existing pension system, which was also PeopleSoft, getting those two to link. We're not changing the module in the new PeopleSoft system. We're getting the two systems to work together so the information can be uploaded, and then, it could work.
And then the last one. When was the last time you did a Staten Island?
Well, Staten Island, we're in Staten and Satoa every year in different aspects of their operation, whether it's revenue, maintenance,
Okay, that's what I thought.
inventory, all the areas. We're there every year. Being that they're not that large, we
Right.
pick and coordinate with Deloitte which particular areas we're going to do.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions for Mike? Thanks, Mike.
Thank you, Jim.
Wish we know that you're keeping busy.
Yep, and I'll give another update at the end of the year on
Okay,
how we
good.
completed it.
Okay, I need a motion to adjourn. Carry.